All right, week 5, day 1. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks now, so I am going to run through this pretty quickly. All right, so for number 1, that's pretty easy. I'm just listing factors for 15 and 10. I'm circling my common factors, which are 1 and 5. For number 2, compare the following using greater than, less than, or equal to. When I'm looking, I'm always starting from the left of the number and I work my way in. So I notice 52 is the same. When I get to the 10th place, I have a 0. 0 is less than 8 in this 10th place. So the key here is just making sure you're paying very close attention to each place and always start from the left to the right. Okay? For number 3, solving using order of operations, remember that GEMDAS, groupings, exponents, multiplication or division, addition or subtraction, depending on which comes first for these always work from left to right. Why do I have a different answer from this side to this side, even though I have the same numerals? It's because my order of operations is different. Okay, looking at number 4, if Troop 227 is sending 493 boxes of cookies to Afghanistan, 16 boxes of cookies can fit in one large box. So how many boxes would I need? In this case, I just used a bar method. I didn't really split it up into 16s. I could have done boxes here where I did 16, 16, and just count it to see how many I would get. When I'm done, I end up with 30, but then I had an additional 13 boxes after 480 evenly fit into 30 boxes. So what do I need to do? I need to add another box to send the rest of those cookies. So that gave me 31 large boxes to put all of the cookies in to fit. Week 5, day 2, I'll pull down just a little bit there. Okay, again, I'm looking for compatible numbers. 782 is compatible with 800. 42 is compatible with 40. I think 8 times 4 is 32. 800 has 2 zeros. 40 has 1 0. So then that means my number has to have 3 zeros. So 32 and 3 zeros is 32,000. How can this information be used to determine if your answer is reasonable for the next problem? Because my next problem, I should come somewhere close to 32,000. So for number 2, I had to use the standard algorithm to solve this, and that gave me 32,844. And if I look at both of these numbers, this number is very close to 32,000. Okay? Next one, number 3, I'm going to zoom in as close as I can to this one. I'm going to use 99 and 999 thousandths to answer this question. So how many times greater is the 9 in the tens place? Well, first I have to know my tens place. It's here. Then the 9 in the tenths place. Well, my tenths place is right here. The first digit behind the decimal is the tenths place. So remember, each number is 10 times greater each time you go. Okay, so from the tenths place to the tens place, that's 10 times, and then another 10 times. So 10 times 10 is 100, so it's 100 times greater than the number in the tens place. Okay, how many times less is the 9 in the thousandths place? Well, here's the 9 in the thousandths place compared to the 9 in the tenths place. Well, again, that would be 2 places back, so divide by 10 times divide by 10 would be, again, 100 times less this time because I'm moving back 2 times over. Okay, so now I've created a number line to show that 37 and 67 hundredths is rounded to the nearest whole. If I look, first thing I did was separated my number by whole. So 37 wholes, 38 whole. And then I did 37 and 50 hundredths because that's the halfway point between 37 and 38. And then I just slowly created tick marks here to show that 37 and 67 hundredths is closer to 38 than 37. Okay, next page. Week 5, day 3. I used 2 methods. For this one, I used a bar method. Okay, I took 23 and divided it into 8,211. You can see my work there. I know that if 23 times 3 is 69, then 23 times 30 would be 690, and 23 times 300 would give me 6,900. So I took a big chunk, I subtracted that chunk here. I took 6,900 and subtracted it from 8 where I began, and that gave me 1,311. So then I had to think again, 23 times what would get me close to 1,311. So I know that if I did 23 times 5, it would give me 115. So 23 times 50 would give me 1,150. Okay, I subtracted that. That gave me 161. So now it was just a matter of doing the next number, figuring out the next number, which is 23 times 7, which is 161, and that came out perfectly. So when I add up 300 plus 50 plus 7, that gives me a total of 357 as my quotient. Okay, here is the partial quotient method. I did the exact same calculations. 23 times 30 or 300 would give me 1,311. I subtract it, and that gave me 1,150. I know that 23 times 50 would give me 1,150, so I subtract it again, and that gave me 161. 23 times 7 gave me 161 evenly. Okay. Rounding, I'm spending a little bit more time on these because these are newer concepts that we've taught. So rounding to the nearest tenths, all I need is the tenths place. I'll look to the right. There's a 5, so that means add 1 to that number. Whole, there's a 4 here, but there's a 0 here, so that tells me that the 4 stays the same. Tens place, I look to the right. There's a 4, so that 1 stays the same in the tens place, and I just rewrite that number as 6,710. Hundreds place, there's a 1 next to the hundredths place, so my 7 stays the same. And then thousands place, there's a 7 next to the 6, so I add 1 according to my rounding rules. Okay, evaluate. Only the people that have watched the video are going to see that there was an error on math. This should be right here, a plus 83, not a minus. That was a mistake on my part. I should have double checked my work before assigning it. So there, here should be a plus, okay? When you solve this using a plus sign, you will get 323 as your answer, okay? With rounding, the best thing to do if you're working from least to greatest is always start from the greatest, even if you have to go from the bottom up, and that's what I did. So remember, you start at the left, and then you look over to the digits for each one. I just went on and put in 3 5s because I knew 5s were going to be my larger number, so those were going to be at the bottom. I look to the digit right next to the 5. There's a 9 here, and there's a 9 here. So what's next? The 4 here and a 0. Well, 4 is greater than 0, so that's going to be my first number at the bottom. And I just continued that same process until I figured out all of my numbers from greatest to least. Okay. Next one, this says to estimate. So to the nearest 10, 67 and 3 tenths would round to 70, and 63 and 7 tenths would round to 60 to the nearest 10. 67 hundredths would round to 0, so that would give me about 130. An exact gave me 131 and 67 hundredths. Okay, number 2, Jody subtracted. She got a difference of 339 and 27 hundredths in her answer. What mistake did she make? Possibly she didn't line up her decimals. So then we have to do that subtracting, and we realize she was way off, and she definitely didn't line up her decimals. You have to line up your decimals. Remember that behind a whole number there's always a decimal there. Annex 2 zeros and subtract, and that gave me 143 and 25 hundredths. For day 4, I needed 72 fewer boxes than from the problem from Monday's homework. So if 493 were shipped, and I was taking 72 fewer, fewer means to subtract, so the correct expression would be 493 minus, actually this is not an expression, this is an equation. Okay, the correct equation would be D. All right, number 4, Juan buys 2 shirts at $8. He also buys a pair of jeans for $20 and gets a $3 discount on his entire purchase. How much did he spend? Write an expression using order of operations to represent the problem, then solve it. So if he had 2 shirts for $8 each, I would need to multiply $8 times 2, right? He also bought $20 jeans, so I would have to add the jeans for $20, and then he gets a discount, which means I would have to take all of this, add it up, and then subtract the $3. So this is why I wrote my expression this way. The first thing I need to do is solve 8 times 2 in parentheses, which would give me 16 plus 20. I'm going to close those brackets because that needs to be solved before I subtract. Okay, now 16 plus 20 would give me 36, and then I subtract 3. 36 minus 3 gives me exactly $33 that he spent. Have a good evening.